Hello friends, this is Nitin and I welcome you to my startup podcast channel Zensar Audio, where we share real stories with real learnings. So my guest speaker today is a two-time successful CEO and a recognized name in the corporate as well as the startup ecosystem in India as well as in the US. And I'm talking about none other than Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, who is currently the executive chairman as well as the founder of 5F World, a platform for digital startup skills and social ventures. Dr. Ganesh has a master's in industrial engineering from NITI. He is a Ph.D. from IIT Bombay and a distinguished alumni of Harvard Business School. He has completed two successful CEO tenures of over 25 years at Aptech and Zensar Technologies. He is also recognized by Ernst & Young, Asia Pacific HR Forum, and by Harvard. To know more about his prolific experience, do visit his website www.ganeshnatarajan.com. And today, Dr. Ganesh will be sharing with us his valuable insights on how to scale up your venture globally. He will share 2 or 3 success stories of those who became successful globally and also few pitfalls one must avoid. Ganesh sir, welcome to Zensar Audio and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
So let me start with, when should startups think of scaling up globally and how can they assess themselves if they are even ready for it?
That's a good question, because a lot of companies tend to be either too early or too late in the game. So first, of course, I think you have to be very clear on, I keep calling it your unique point of view. Because if you have something which is sellable in a specific market, it doesn't mean it works in another market, because the other market may be more mature or may not need something. So first assess what is your point of view, what is the competition in that particular market, and how do you compare, and what is your business model? Because if you are selling a service or a product, are you ready to service in that particular market? It's very important. Yeah. Because the worst thing you can do is launch something in a market and then you find that you're either not responding to a query or you're not giving the proper service. So that becomes an issue. So I would think first look at your point of view and business model. Make sure that your model is something that can work in any market, and choose your market extremely carefully. Because I have advised many startups to focus just on India, or sometimes I've told them don't even look at India because India will not appreciate your product. Instead, maybe either take it to the Middle East or take it to English-speaking countries or primarily in the US. But don't just restrict it to one market. Be clear when you want to do it and how you want to do it, and then we can make it up. Just to give you one example, there's a company we've invested in called Skills Alpha. Yeah. And Skills Alpha is a full digital platform for corporates as well as universities to manage student learning or employee learning. And this is now finding traction not only in India but also in the Middle East, also in the US. We have a couple of inquiries from the Nordic areas. Okay. So once you have something which is defensible across markets, then I think good digital marketing will get you inquiries from anywhere. But as I said, if it's market specific, make sure that you make a big impact in the market and then venture. Because focus, to my mind, is extremely important for any startup to be successful.
So what essential elements need to be in place for any startup to scale up globally?
I think two I've already mentioned. The first is obviously the point of view, that you have to have something which is unique, where you can justify that it is a new value that you're adding. The second is how you will deliver the product or service, which is the business model. So how will you market it? How will you support the marketing? How will you ensure that the product or service is delivered well and after sales is done? The third is, I think, getting a good complementary quality team. Because if you are just one sales organization, then sometimes you falter on delivery. Okay. Sometimes people have an outstanding product, but they don't know how to sell. So I think a combination of good sales, good financial savvy, good product creation and delivery, and probably good people management, that's becoming a large organization. All those I think are important. So and of course capital raising. So I think if you look at point of view, if you look at business model, look at team, look at market access, and look at fundraising or capital raising. If you have these 5 elements thought through and really planned over maybe a 3-year horizon, then I think you have everything going to be successful. And that is an essential to be successful in the market.
So to summarize,
is it valid for that market? What's the competition? What is going to be your unique point of view? And how will you succeed?
Awesome. How should entrepreneurs plan for aggressive marketing strategy and build up resources to scale up globally?
See, I think marketing is now almost a science. It's no longer a question of making a few phone calls and making it happen. So I would say, look at marketing as almost like a 3 or 4 part model. The first is, of course, making sure that, what you are capable of doing, you're telling the story well. Sometimes people use so much of jargon and their websites are so complicated that they miss the plot of the story. So I think, being able to articulate it well with as minimum words and more of demonstration and modeling as possible, that's one. The second is, of course, your elevator pitch. Are you in a position to tell somebody in 2 minutes exactly what to do and why yes? The third, of course, is the classical inbound marketing. So where you're generating leads through identifying the segments that you want to target, the geographies you want to target, what is your story for the persona who's going to buy your service. I think that's going to be very important. And once you've generated leads through inbound marketing, how do you then do outbound? So what is the methodology by which you make the first call to a customer? If there is a need for a physical face-to-face interaction, and what stage do you make that happen? And of course, very strong capability on how to close the deal. I think this is the entire elements of the marketing mix, from opening up opportunities, telling your story, closing the opportunity, and then being engaging well with the customer. So if you think through all this well, I think it'll be much easier to be successful in the marketplace.
And about key resources?
Never be short of capital. And I'll give you an example. When my wife was doing her first startup, she was actually the head of strategy for HSBC, for their global resourcing. And she has a solid track record in skills development, because she's right from NIIT to Aptech to ZTV. And she was very clear that, look, unless she gets 30 crores of funding, the skills business is not something which you can just bootstrap and do family and friends around. So I think she made sure that she had enough capital that gave her the ability to invest for the long term. So I think that's important. So, some things may not need that kind of capital, but whatever you need, especially if it's a product development company, make sure you're adequately resourced in terms of capital, and also that you don't cut corners in some team. Because if you compromise on the quality of your CTO or the quality of your productionizing team, then you'll eventually come up with a substandard kit. So I think it's extremely important to be resourced well in terms of marketing, in terms of production teams, and in terms of capital to be able to succeed and differentiate yourself in the market.
That's great. So could you please share some examples of these startups who have successfully scaled up globally?
Sure, I can give you 2-3 examples. One is one of the first startups I invested in, which was in the US, a company called Beyond Code, based out of California, and the entrepreneur was of Indian origin, Arijit Sengupta, and he actually went to Stanford and went to Harvard Business School and built his model. And it was an amazing model where which could actually track in any process that is being computerized or that's being managed exactly all the data points and really make it much easier and streamlined to manage the process. So it was a complex set of algorithms, but Arijit had his plan absolutely right. And within 3 years, he was able to scale it, was chased by all the major software vendors, and finally sold his company to SFDC, Salesforce. So I think that's one example of a company which really was very clear in its focus on what they want to build and how they want to exit. That's important. Second is, of course, this company that I mentioned called Skills Alpha, which is really scaling at this point of time, primarily because they've identified and really invested heavily in building their digital platform, which is AI, mentoring, coaching, everything built into one platform. And they're finding there are multiple use cases. So they're now exploiting the corporate use case, just launching a university use case for that. So they know exactly what they want to sell, which markets, and that's how they're scaling that business. Third, if I can give you one example, there's this company that is in India. It's called LHI Digital, Live History India Digital, set up by a very experienced entrepreneur who was one of the executive editors of CNBC TV as well as UTV. And she has set up this entity to be a digital platform for history and culture. So they've identified 1,000 little known places in India, and they're able to articulate that, have a very strong Facebook presence. So I think Mini Menon, who's the founder, she's been extraordinarily successful in terms of really being able to take this idea to almost 7 or 11 investors she has, including us. And also, most important, getting historians, getting people from the government interested in the project. So I think it's a combination of very good marketing, fundraising capability, and building something which is unique in the market. Yeah. All these three are very different segments, but very successful. And if I can give you a fourth, company called Ahamyun. Ahamyun is set up by a very young Kashmiri woman called Parul Ganju. And Parul again has raised a lot of money, and in the space of skin disease curing, she's been the fastest to market. So she's finished all the animal trials for drug research, is launching human trials, and if she does this, it'll be a product out of India with minimum possible investment and minimum possible time. So I think there are some outstanding entrepreneurs who are very focused on what they want and they're able to go out and make it happen.
Now, we are aware of startups like Groupon and Ask Me services which scaled up too prematurely, and as a result, Groupon is hardly the unicorn as many had anticipated, while Ask Me had to shut down its services in August 2016. So, what are the pitfalls of scaling up too fast, and how should these startups instead scale up sustainably while keeping themselves lean?
I think you have to make sure that you never drop service quality. Because one problem of being a little greedy and saying, okay, we'll do multiple markets, we'll do the US, etc. is first of all you end up burning your investors' cap very very quickly, and then you get investors sitting on your head and saying what's happening. And second is you're not your brand reputation falls. So if you want to offer a perfect service, I think you have to ensure that your branding and your capability for servicing your brand promise, I think that is max. So never reach out too fast where you don't have either the service capability or the manpower to be able to support that in a specific segment or in a specific geography. But once you take care of that, then of course don't be too conservative, because as Mr. Narayan Murthy always says, a ship is safest in the harbor, but then it doesn't get anywhere. So you can't be over conservative, you can't be over risk taking. So the right amount of entrepreneurial risk taking, pushing the boat out and making it happen. I think that's really the maturity that you have to get, either yourself as an entrepreneur or get an advisory board or get an investor who's strategic enough to advise you on how to grow your company.
Now, you being an investor in several startups, what are the key aspects that you look for in a startup to invest in them?
The core things I look at is, first of all, passion. Is the person willing to sleep, eat, breathe their startup? This is not a 9 to 5 job, being an entrepreneur. So you have to make sure that, you're really passionate about it and you want to stay the long. That's one. Second is, I think, good articulation, because you may have the best mousetrap in the world, as always says, but the world will not automatically beat a path of gold to your mousetrap. So you have to be able to sell it. So if you don't sell it properly, then you're not going to be successful. These two are the main things, because I think once that is there, then the entrepreneur, the rest of it follows. Everything I talked about in terms of product and team and capital. If the entrepreneur is passionate and can articulate well, I think that's half the battle.
That's great. So with this, we have reached at the end of this podcast. Ganesh sir, it was an honor to have you on Zensar Audio, and thank you so much for sharing some great insight for the entire ecosystem.
Thank you. Bye, Nitin.
Lastly, I want to thank all the listeners who took their valuable time to listen to this podcast. Keep rocking, be safe, and don't forget to share.